upgrading is a primary source of revenue for any tower company these days, and I think it comes down to how the original contract was written, and how tightly you control the technology in addition to the things that were mounted on the tower. So the apertures are one thing, but the technology and the licensing, the things that you can't see when you look at a tower are important. We do it when we build a tower. We've always tried to control that. However, ones we have purchased, that's one of the things that is a challenge, how tight the contract was written. So most of the carriers, though, are, I would call them very cooperative, and if it's contractually allowed, they'll want to do it. If it's not, then you're into a negotiation.
Just yesterday, an online newsletter indicated that the consolidators are looking to these changes, that you call them, as being another source of income. I can tell you that from our experience with all of the carriers in the last year or so who have been gradually upgrading their sites, they're fighting like hell to not pay anything. There's another dynamic going on that is affecting this in a negative way, but it's good for the carriers, and that is that the technology is allowing them to put 10 pounds of antennas in a 5-pound bag. In other words, the actual occupancy on towers is not increasing, but the capacity of the antenna system and the carrier that's located in that particular site is just expanding wildly to take advantage of the huge demand of data. I understand that on the average cell site in a metropolitan area, very close to half the output is not voice anymore. I think everybody knows that. So you did mention small operator. I think what the small operator needs to really understand and digest that in this business, as you pointed out, technology changing, it's so dramatic that I would not hesitate to say that when you think about the old days, you're thinking about 2009. Now, I just don't know of any industry on the planet where you can make that statement, but it is true.
So I think it's more sophisticated now. There's more people in it with the objective to own towers. Everybody from construction guys to a site act guy. Still, I think they're limited. It's difficult to borrow money or to get equity, except I think in the tower business has been a market that a lot of people have. A lot of the money people have gone to, because I don't know of any bank or equity group that's ever lost money in a tower deal. So, but you still have the small guys, the mom and pops that have passed it down now, and then you have people that came out of carrier environment or out of a large company. When Spectra site went under, you saw a lot of people end up in different places. So, but to me, today, it's more difficult. It's more sophisticated, more difficult. The big question, and this may kick you off on a new topic here, but the big question is broadcast. And the value of a broadcaster on your tower, and who's going to survive, and the multiples that broadcasters got a few years ago when they sold their stations are not there today. And so how do you value a tower that has one broadband tenant and two broadcasters?
But I don't think that the relationship or the existence of the consolidators in the marketplace is a problem, or really has ever been a problem for us. Do they get some of the business that we should get? A little bit. But at the end of the day, what really matters are your coordinates, your elevations, your capacity. There also is a factor that we have benefited from, and that is we advertise in our ad RCR that we can turn a lease around in 10 days. They can't. They won't even try. And they are very unresponsive to just basic information requests about the tower, about availability of specific elevations on a given site. So we don't worry about them. There are some other, shall we say, upstarts coming into the business, believe it or not, even though times look bleak. I'll get to that in a moment as to how bleak and why bleak. But there are some new guys that we never heard of before. They're competing with us for certain sites where zoning approval, zoning variances are requested. They're in there with another tower proposal. And then let's not forget that out there in the Never Never Land is the possibility that Sprint will find a way to digest Nextel, although there is a recent story in this trade publication, this newsletter, that there's a possibility that Nextel might be used by Light Square or what's the other new one?
With Clearwire and Light Square?
No, not Clearwire. I have it in my briefcase, but there are two new carriers. They were supposed to be carriers. They were not going to be selling to the public retail. They were going to just be overflow operators. And they may just take over the Nextel infrastructure. That would be very nice, and it would be good for the tower owners to know that they won't ultimately lose Nextel.
Yeah.
And for those that have both of the carriers, both T-Mobile and AT&T on their tower, I think it's an unknown. If I were a small operator and I had a number of those, you could take the view, sell now while there's revenue, or you could say, okay, I'm just going to ride it out. I mean, those are your two choices, really. And it's once again, it's valuation. It's how do you value a T-Mobile installation on the same tower as an AT&T installation, and the same with a Nextel and a Sprint.
Yeah.
And what are those worth? Now, if you're just interested in income and not really valuation, then you're just going to ride it out. But once again, if I'm acquiring a tower, we've created a gap between the seller's expectation and the buyer's expectation, and with the uncertainty of both those, it's a tough time. It's a tough time to try to figure that out. A smaller guy has to be worried about it more.
Yeah.
The large, the big operators, 20,000 towers, you can have some of that and hardly notice it. So it's I think it just adds to the challenges for a small operator.
This isn't timely, but it already happened. Talking about negatives, we've just seen a very well-heeled, high-paying customer disappear suddenly, without warning, called Flow TV, a division of Qualcomm.
Yeah.
That's a loss that's happening this year as leases expire. It'll continue through next year and possibly even into 13. And that's no small thing, at least not for us. And then we didn't suffer this, but I know that some consolidators that have a lot of broadcast, mostly television, on their towers, when they bought those towers, there was an analog and a digital antenna on it.
Yeah, the transition.
And as of February 2 years ago,
the DTP transition,
the requirement of giving back that analog frequency, I don't know how that affected like American Tower and others like that. I don't know how, whether they had built that into the digital rate when they put the second antenna up. But that happened, and that probably caused a fairly substantial loss of revenue, wouldn't you think?